Good evening, Space Drinking Specialist. Welcome to part 2 of episode 7 of At the Tavern. I'm Tyler again.
And this is Patrick again, and here's our guest tonight, second guest.
Would you like to introduce yourself?
Comrade.
Greetings, Comrade. My name is Tovresh Pazan, and in Soviet Russia games play you.
They do. Sometimes not very fairly.
Not very fairly at all. Alright, so, what was your inspiration for this game?
Believe it or not, my inspiration for this game was the old Spy vs. Spy video game from back in the early 80s.
Oh, that's awesome.
You don't see it as much in the release version, but the original prototype for this game had each player... You started out with just a deck of cards on the table, and each player was actually drawing the cards, keeping the ones they wanted, and the ones they didn't want, they would just seed down into the table, similar to in that video game where you would get the traps and booby trap all the pieces of furniture while you trying to hide the things that you were trying to find in order to escape. The problem with that was that people were only putting bad cards down, so as long as there was a deck, people would just always draw from the deck, and then as soon as you flipped a card over, they would die. So... we changed it around a little bit, and now it's just a fun romp of, about 20 to 30 minutes of people trying to basically play memory, except you can also screw your neighbor. It's just meant to be a little filler, a little family game, something to kill the time while you're waiting for everybody to show up for something big and final later in the night.
Okay, alright. Are you big into any, like, Cold War era type of espionage stuff at all, or just Spy versus Spy?
Spy vs. Spy particularly. I mean, of course, who doesn't love Twilight Struggle, but then who also has 6 hours to sit around and play Twilight Struggle every weekend?
That is true. That is true.
So I was just trying to, capture the essence of the paranoia and the intense hatred of Americans versus Russians, and try to encapsulate it all in a light little 20-minute game.
Yeah, that's really awesome. How long would you say your game has been in development?
It depends on how you define development. The core rules to the game I figured out driving home from a convention one night over the course of about 45 minutes. It took about a month of play testing to turn that into an actual game, and then it was just an endless repetition of play testing and refining and play testing and refining and play testing and refining. I think it probably took about a year to get the game to the point where I was comfortable showing it to publishers, and then from that point it took about another year to find a publisher that actually wanted to publish it.
Okay, alright, so it took 2 years to get here?
About that, yeah.
Okay, very cool, very cool.
So, what do you want to tell us about the actual game?
That you haven't told us already.
Yeah. Is there anything like any little Easter eggs you found in your design process, or anything you want to share that'll be cool?
No real Easter eggs to be found there, because the nature of the game is to be a simple one that you can teach easily and play with just about anybody. There were a number of cards that didn't make the final cut, just because they required a little bit too much thinking, or they were perfectly fine cards, but we had to trim down the number of cards in order to get it to fit in that little package. Those might be coming out as an expansion at some point in the not-too-distant future. In addition, if anybody listening to this is in Southern California, Los Angeles area specifically, Spy Guys is actually going to be having a launch party on Sunday, March 21st at Story Tavern in Burbank from 1 to 3 p.m.
Oh, wow.
And if everything goes according to plan, there might be some news about an expansion to share there, but it's a little too tentative to say anything more definite than that at this point.
Awesome. Well, I'm just making a note so we can put that in our post-show notes.
Yeah, we usually post the thing after our shows on our website so people can go back. I mean, we have a bunch of people that view it, but they're not able to view it on our Tuesday night showing because they have work in Wednesday morning usually, so... But,
Right. If you can hear me, I seem to have frozen. If you can hear me, I'm going to log out and log back in. Testing 1 2 3. Can you hear me? Testing 1 2 3. Can you hear me?
You there?
I'm here.
Okay,
At least
cool.
I can hear you.
Yes.
I
We
was
lost
just about
internet.
to-
We lost internet for a second down here. So
Hate it when that happens. There you are.
I have no idea what happened. But we're back. We're back.
I was furiously typing you an email.
Yeah, we were about to be like, oh god, Rich, don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
Comrade.
Comrade, sorry. Toporich.
Oh, don't worry about it. This is the West Coast. We're all laid back about these things.
So where were we on
Where were we?
Oh, we were on the tournament. How did your tournament go? How did that come about? Where did you do it? That kind of thing.
So the tournament was run at a little local convention called StrategicCon. It's run at Los Angeles International Airport basically every 3-day weekend, so 3 times a year. I've been a volunteer there for about 5 years running HeroClix and recently Dice Masters. And so when I had the new game coming out, the volunteer coordinator said, well, you realize you are running a tournament, right? So at the lovely, much heavily participated hour of 8 p.m. on a Sunday, I went down to the main gaming floor and actually managed to round up 4 people that didn't know me to play the game with me and my wife.
Did you
So
win?
for those 4 people,
won?
it was a rousing success.
Who won?
It was almost my wife, but she threw the game so that we could give the prize to one of the 4 people that had showed up.
Oh, that's great.
That is good, honest game designing right there. Gameplay, game design.
Yeah.
Game
Well, I figured ultimately I'm going to get more people to buy the game if I've got this person running around the convention saying, look at this cool game that I just won. So, you know, it was a purely calculated, cynical business move, but it seems to have worked.
There's nothing wrong with that.
Tell us a little bit. This is for all our indie designers that might tune into this. What do you have? What advice do you have about going about getting published with your games?
The biggest piece of advice that I can offer is go to as many conventions as you possibly can.
Cool.
Most publishers will have a presence at a convention of any size. You may have to be willing to travel. The really good ones for this are Dice Tower Convention in Florida and Board Game Geek Con in Texas, because those tend to be more social in their focus. The publishers that show up are going to have a little bit more time to meet with you. It's always good if you can to set up an appointment in advance. They may or may not be willing to talk to you. Just you got to keep knocking on every door until you get there. The other thing to look for is there's a new thing that has come up in about the last 2 years or so called the Unpub Network, which is a group that is specifically focused around connecting unpublished designers with publishers that are looking for new blood. That actually is how Spy Guys got published. The first Unpub event that happened on the West Coast happened in Orange County back around, I want to say it was September. And my publisher, Victory Point Games, had a representative there. He was wandering around. He looked at my prototype, thought it looked interesting, and the rest, as they say, is history.
Cool.
And I have an off-topic question for you. Are
Best
you a
kind.
Ducks fan or a Kings fan?
Or are you even a Hockey's fan?
Yeah, I was about to say, I betray all that is good and noble about Los Angeles by having the only sports team that I follow being the San Francisco 49ers.
Okay. Well, there you go.
Acceptable. So I'm gonna bring this up to the camera for everybody to see. You're gonna correct me on this because I have no way of seeing you. Yeah, right. So we have our review copy of Spy Guys
Right there.
right here. When you buy the game, it comes with this really neat package. I don't know if you can read the artwork on the front.
Yeah.
Everything that comes inside, the back opens up. Rulebook is actually the back, has all your rules in it. And your deck of every cards, and this is everything you need to play, correct?
Absolutely.
So, small e-package, stores in many great places. So that is the packaging of Spaghetti, and I guess the unboxing.
And other than traveling and everything, do you have any advice for anyone just starting out?
Get involved in as many local interest groups as you possibly can. One of the ways that this game was refined was there's a group of other sort of dilettante game designers that meet in Los Angeles once a month, and we basically force each other to playtest each other's designs. And the way it works is for each design, each hour that you spend testing somebody else's design, you earn credits that you can then use to force other people to test your designs. And whoever has the most credits gets priority. Each person that plays your game deducts from your credits, and so it just kind of keeps everything floating around. It also means that the first time you show up, you have to be willing to just sit down and test other people's designs. So it kind of is all about everybody working for their own mutual benefit, and that works really well. The other thing, too, is that for this game, the artist was somebody. I was involved in a podcast called We Talk Games for about 2 years. And the person who wound up being the artist for this game was actually one of the other contributors to We Talk Games. So it really is just, I found out about the playtesting group via Yahoo groups. I found out about this podcast via iTunes. The artist actually lives, I believe, in Tennessee. I live in California. Everything was just handled via the internet, and then through Facebook, I found out about Unpub Network, and I'm getting published by some guys in Orange County. So you just really have to, this is a really exciting time to be an indie developer because there are resources that just never existed before, but you really have to be willing to just take the bull by the horns and go down every door until you find someone that'll open for you.
Yeah, you gotta hit the pavement.
Exactly. But it's not. It's as much about networking as it is about anything else. And by that I don't mean connecting to 200 different people on Facebook. It really is about just getting out there, finding as many like-minded people as you can, and just putting your heads together, and eventually something will bubble up.
Very good. Very good point, actually. I come from a theater background, and the idea of marketing yourself is something that's drilled into you as an independent, I guess, really in any field, especially.
Oh, absolutely.
So, yeah, that I agree 100% with your advice.
Yeah.
So, is there anything? Actually, I guess we just say, take us through the day in the life of a published game designer. There's people out there who have that dream of getting their game published, and they make $1 billion on it, and retire and things like that. So why don't you give us like an overview of what it's like to be a published game designer?
All right. Well, first of all, unless your name is Reiner Knizia or Bruno Cathala, you're not going to make $1 million designing games. So just understand that. The day of a published game designer, at this point, from where I am in my design career, if you can even call it that, is pretty much like any other. I have a 9-to-5 job. I have a wife that I have to make sure gets a little bit of attention so that she doesn't make me sleep on the sofa. I have dogs that need to be walked. Around all of that, the first thing I have to do at the start of my day is just take a look at Board Game Geek to see if anybody has printed any rules questions into the discussion forums there. Answering those is a great way to get your name out there and to really, people look at a company like WizKids, who is sort of famous for not answering questions ever. And despite the fact that HeroClix is a really popular and well-selling game, and Dice Masters is just tearing off the ceiling, people are not very happy with the company and their unresponsiveness. Then throughout the course of the day, I will have ideas for the next expansion, things that need to get tweaked for the next release. I have to make sure that I interface with my project manager over at Victory Point to make sure that he's up to snuff with the latest and greatest, and to make sure, honestly, that he's, giving my design the attention that it deserves, because, in his defense, he's a busy guy. He's got 30 different games to work on at any given time, and it's like anything else, the squeaky wheel is the one that gets the grease.
Right.
End of the day, if I'm really lucky, I can convince my wife to playing another round with me, because at the end of the day, and this actually relates to the best piece of advice I can give you, you're only going to get anything out of this personally if you design the games you want to play.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
You know, and obviously doing something like a Twilight Imperium for your first design is probably not realistic. But, you know, this was actually probably about the 6th design that I had started with, but the first one that I actually got through to this point. And it's in a lot of ways because this is the one that I really connected with the most out of everything I had going on the plate at that time. And, you know, it helps that that my friend from the internet was able to produce some really, really good artwork for what it is. You know, it's not meant to be a sort of epic painting like you'd see on a Magic card. It's meant to be simple, whimsical cartoon artwork that evokes the era without necessarily tying it to a specific person or place. And I think that he's captured that really well.
Yeah.
I would agree.
We're really excited to play it. So
I've been reading over the rules and pretty pumped about it. So I had another question. Are you working on any other games, or is this going to be your #1 project for the foreseeable future?
You know, a good designer always has many designs in the hopper. I've got 2 at this point that are close to being a prototype, and if everything goes to plan, I will have a prototype of my next one at the next design group meetup on the 21st, the day before the launch party for Spy Guys. So, you know, it always comes right back around to what's new and what's old. The new one has a working title of Medieval Fast Food, and it is all about trying to get your knights into the castle while having dragons eat everybody else's knights.
That sounds like a lot of fun.
Still very early in the design phase, but I'm to the point now where the rules at least make enough sense that making a prototype is the next logical phase, which, honestly, they don't all get even that far.
well, we'll totally beta test for you if you want.
When that time comes around.
Yeah.
Careful what you offer, you just might get it.
We offer.
Oh, the offer has been laid down.
The offer has been thrown.
We'll play a game. We'll even try to help you think of names, like, you know, called Dragon's Drive-Thru or something.
There you go.
So,
Better an offer than a gauntlet, I suppose.
Yeah. So I think that's all the questions I had.
Yeah. I think that's all of our questions, Comrade. If you don't mind just hanging tight, we got to cover War Machine Tactics real quick, and then we'll wrap up.
Let's do it.
We put up a thread in Reddit. See if anybody wanted to ask us any questions. We haven't gotten anything really yet.
Yeah, we usually save the last 5-10 minutes just for question Q&A, so we'll get there at the end. But recently we just hammered War Machine Tactics out.
I don't know how to feel about this game. I'm going to be completely honest. Cause
It's beautiful when the graphics are just beautiful.
Yeah. My problems with the game, there's a couple things actually. From a gameplay standpoint, the cutscenes look like still pictures with subtitles.
That's exactly what they are, and a moving camera.
Which is, I guess, okay, but
I mean, if they're capturing like their miniatures, but they're playing the game off like they're real people, except their cutscenes are like the minis.
Yeah, I would like to have seen some character animation in the cutscenes. That's a big thing because it's literally just the models staring at each other, and I guess it's supposed to emulate the actual tabletop.
That's what I thought.
They just didn't have the budget to do animations, but
there's no way they blew that Kickstarter out of the water.
That's true. They did blow that Kickstarter out of the water.
The model facing, like your units facing, it auto faces for you. Like if you're moving forward, there's no reason for your unit to just 180.
Yeah, which has happened a couple times.
It happened all night for you.
Yeah. As far as level design goes, yeah, it's frustrating. It's beyond frustrating. One of the levels that I've been stuck on is one of the earlier earlier levels, where you have to save this gun mage from attacking
Rourke.
To save Rourke from these attacking assault commandos, But the only problem is Rourke stops literally a block away from where you start. Like he couldn't run the extra, block to get to you, which is kind of frustrating because I played the level the first time thinking, oh, he'll run to me. No, he got into this sandbag square about a block from where I was and just sat there.
Well, it's like 3 turns from where you're at. Yeah, it takes you 3 turns to get to him.
So you have to run somebody up and sync up, and then he has to run to you. It's the game. The game. Don't get me wrong. The game is really fun to play in multiplayer. We've played a couple games together, and it's really fun. It's really fun.
It's a good time.
The single player campaign, I think, needs some work. Anything else you want to add?
I do like how they did the hit or miss. You can see your dice roll in the screen, but I don't know. It's a video game. I think they should have made it a little more streamlined. I mean, I get that they wanted to keep it tabletop turn-based, but
I think we'll see what happens with the updates if they do any more updates.
Well, I mean, we're on version 9.281, so I assume we're going to hit version 1.0 soon.
Yeah, that's true. I don't have anything else.
Yeah, that's about it. So let's check the Q&A. Comrade, you're more than welcome to pitch in here if you'd like. And
well, I would just like to riff on what you guys were saying a little bit there. I haven't played War Machine Tactics specifically, but I've played quite a few adaptations of tabletop miniatures games into digital through the work I do over at iPadBoardGames.org. And there's 2 specifically that I want to bring up here, which are Space Hulk and Blood Bowl.
Okay.
Which are, sort of in a similar genre there. Well, maybe Blood Bowl not so much, but Space Hulk certainly. Both of those games are tabletop adaptations where dice rolling is absolutely critical. And neither of them actually show the dice rolls on the screen at all. Both of them have logs that you can pull up that will reveal the dice rolls, but other than that, your pieces, you order your pieces around and you see the movements of your pieces, and then things just sort of happen. And unless you're specifically looking at the underlying mechanics that govern the game, you have no understanding of why a surefire attack suddenly failed, or why an impenetrable defense suddenly got penetrated and you got savaged. I think that if you're going to try to simulate the tabletop experience, having those dice rolls there is really critical. And a good example of how you could do that would be the recent iPad adaptation of Battlelore, where that one is all about rolling dice to get specific icons. So when you're in combat, little squares appear next to your pieces, and the icons that you're quote-unquote rolling just sort of show up there in a specific order so that they resolve nice and neatly. But it gives you much more of a sense of engagement because you understand why what's happening is happening.
Yeah. I mean, I do really like to see, pass or fail. I got a 3, a 2, and a 1. I'm like, well, totally failed that one. But
exactly.
As I mentioned in previous podcasts, I have terrible luck rolling dice in real life.
And it carried over.
And for some reason, it keeps carrying over even into the virtual rolling. I had a 98% chance to hit, and I missed with 5 guys. I still don't know how that happened.
The dice gods hate you, in other words.
I was just completely at a loss for words on that.
We need to sacrifice a bunch of dice.
I need to melt a bunch of dice and make one super dice
to the dice gods.
And created like a dice demigod to worship.
Roll a 20 out for your fallen comrades.
Make a shrine right over here.
So actually, Comrade, I got a quick question. Are how into the RPG scene are you? Are you a big role player at all?
Used to be once upon a time, and it's actually something my wife would like to get more into. No, not that kind of role playing. But
you dream, right?
Back, if it tells you anything, the last time I did an RPG, Gehenna still hadn't happened in White Wolf, so.
Wow.
Well.
Yeah, been a while.
I started on Dungeons & Dragons 2, and then Advanced Dungeons & Dragons, and he started on 3.5, just to give you an age reference to our book.
Blaspheme. The version that shall not speak its name.
Oh, no, that's 4.
That's 4.
4 is horrible.
Well, 4 just doesn't exist, so I don't know what you're talking about there.
So, So do you have like a favorite RPG or?
With the understanding that I'm not necessarily in touch with the current pulse, the White Wolf system always really appealed to me, just because, I personally think that an RPG should be as much about telling the story as about rolling dice or worrying about any kind of game or combat mechanics. And White Wolf really struck me as the only system, at least that I had been exposed to, where that same emphasis on storytelling was baked into the system, and the rules were all in service to the story rather than the other way around. And to an extent, you can understand how D&D wound up that way, because it started out as a set of just tactical miniature rules that role-playing kind of got grafted on top of.
Yeah.
But to me, the combat mechanics in Dungeons and Dragons always seemed so abstracted from anything else that was going on. It didn't really come together as a whole for me the way White Wolf did.
Okay. Well, we're gonna be live streaming our own Iron Kingdoms RPG here in a couple weeks. If you'd like to tune in, check it out. It's a D6 style mechanic, and we might have room in a few weeks after that for a 5th player. And if you like it enough, we could possibly use you.
Cool. Can't make any promises, but I'll certainly check it out.
That'd be cool.
I mean, there's tons of lore and tons of action. If you want, we can send you some PDFs, 2 PDFs, and they're pretty exhaustive.
Yeah, shoot it over.
Cool. I don't really have anything. Q&A.
Do you have any questions? Did you find? I'll check mine too.
Yeah, you want to check? Just doing a quick check, and we should be ready to sign off in a couple minutes here.
All these different tabs I have open, it takes a minute.
Yeah. That's the worst part, is cycle through.
Like, no, that's from last week. We answered that one.
Yeah, you've just described my day job. My company does streaming for companies like Stars, so I've got 87 tabs open for each different customer.
Oh,
wow. That sounds like fun.
Do you have any? Oh wait, I'm pulling up the question. Give me a sec here.
I have one, just a general RPG question. Advice for writing an adventure.
There's no such thing as having too much of a background grounding in the lore of whatever system you're writing about. I think that you should play at least 3 different adventures and read at least one piece of fiction set in the world before you ever try to write something that is going to be looked at by anyone other than you and your best friend.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I'm actually currently plowing through Kings, Nations, and Gods from this, which is the 2nd rulebook they released.
Well, it's mostly pure lore.
It's lore on all the Iron Kingdoms that are in the world. And I had an idea for our campaign in the coming future, and they just keep changing and expanding and things like that. I guess my biggest thing when you're planning an adventure is plan for your PCs to do something absolutely crazy that will completely destroy everything you had planned.
Like the time I drank the entire tavern.
Yeah, those things happen. So that would be.
Of course they do.
Mine.
And one of our favorites we like to ask our guests is, what's your most humorous RPG death ever? If you have one, points out.
I tend not to have excellent ones, but my personal favorite was one. There was a adventure we were running. We had been working on it for 3 years. We finally had stormed the castle of the evil wizard, and we're down into the bowels of his lair. And the GM was setting the scene dramatically and talking about the giant carved obsidian throne upon which he was seated, and the bones of the adventurers that had tried and failed to do what we were now attempting, and the 2 columns of flame shooting up on either side of him. Whereupon the thief immediately says, "I put my hands in the flame." And all of the players looked at him and said, "Why are you doing that?" And the DM looked at him and said, "Why are you doing that?" And the thief just sort of rolled his eyes and said, "Because he's a wizard. whatever really cool stuff he has is going to be in the flames. So the players shrug, and the DM shrugs, and he rolls some dice, and he says, okay, you take 4 hit points and die.
That's pretty great.
Oh, that's awesome.
Wow. That's impressive. That's almost like the time I had a character in a campaign jump off a building once, simply because he believed that he was immortal. He wasn't immortal.
It's one way to test the theory, if nothing else.
Yeah. So that's all I got.
Yeah. So
That's all we got here at the tavern. Thanks again to Comrade for coming out.
yeah, big thank you.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
In California.
Must be nice. It's like 3 feet of snow outside, 20 degrees, maybe -11.
More snow coming.
Hey, it rained yesterday. There was a puddle in front of my car.
Oh no, not that.
Tragedy.
I had to scrape all of the ice off my car. I had a carsicle.
Oof.
So yeah. So thanks again. We will see everybody next week.